There was a time when the American shopping mall was the center of everything. Our weekends started there. Our first jobs happened there. Entire communities gathered under one climate-controlled roof. Then in the 1990s, something shifted. What followed was not evolution, it was the slow-motion collapse of a social institution we will never see again. If you're someone who values how understanding culture shapes generations, subscribe for more stories like this. Now, let us look at what we had before it all fell apart. In the 1970s and the 1980s, the American mall was more than a place to shop. It was a third place, somewhere between home and work, where life actually happened. Teenagers spent entire Saturdays wandering the corridors. Families claimed tables at the food court for hours. The elderly walked laps before the stores even opened, using the space as their personal gymnasium. The mall meant safety, climate control, a curated world where everything worked and nothing threatened you. Fountains sparkled under skylights. Potted ferns created the illusion of nature without any of the inconvenience. You could spend an entire day inside and never notice the weather outside. Those years felt permanent. Every suburb had one. Every mall had the same stores, the same layout, the same reassuring familiarity. You could walk into a mall in Ohio or Arizona and immediately know where you were. The Gap on the left, the food court past the fountain, the anchor department stores at each end, like bookends holding civilization together. We weren't just shopping. We were participating in a shared American experience, a ritual of browsing, buying, and belonging. By 1990, shopping centers accounted for over 50% of all retail sales in America. The country had built more than 1,500 enclosed regional malls. They employed millions of people. They generated $400 billion in local tax revenue each year. The mall wasn't just successful, it was the economic engine of suburban America. But something was about to change, something that would destroy everything. The American mall had been built on a structural flaw that nobody noticed during the boom years. We had overbuilt. By the mid-1990s, America had constructed approximately 24 square feet of retail space for every person in the country. That is 5 times more than the United Kingdom and 10 times more than Germany. We had saturated the market so completely that failure was guaranteed the moment consumer behavior shifted even slightly. The developers did not care. They kept building. Between 1970 and 2000, the number of shopping centers exploded from a few hundred to over 70,000. Every new suburb demanded its own mall. Every mall needed to be bigger than the last one. The competition for tenants became vicious. The quality declined. Then came the internet. The 1990s did not kill the mall immediately. The death was slow, gradual, almost imperceptible at first. But by 1995, the seeds were planted. Amazon launched. eBay followed. Suddenly, the mall's primary advantage, being a one-stop shop where you could compare products, became obsolete. Why drive 20 minutes, park half a mile from the entrance, and wander through a maze of stores when you could search, compare, and purchase from your desk? The convenience that the mall had offered for 40 years evaporated in less than a decade. E-commerce did not just steal sales, it stole time. Malls had survived because people had nothing better to do. Browsing was entertainment. Window shopping was a social activity. But the internet offered infinite entertainment, infinite browsing. You did not need to leave your house to feel connected to the world of products and possibilities. By the early 2000s, the mall had stopped being a destination and became an errand, a chore. Something you did when you absolutely had to, not because you wanted to. The anchor stores were the first to collapse. Sears, JCPenney, Macy's. These massive department stores had been the foundation of the mall's economic model. They drew foot traffic. They paid lower rent because their presence justified the higher rents charged to smaller inline stores. When the anchors started closing, the entire structure crumbled. By 2017, department stores had lost over 40% of their workforce. Their share of U.S. retail sales dropped from 14.5% in 1990 to less than 2% by 2024. The massive boxes they left behind, 200,000 square feet of empty retail space, sat vacant for years. Nobody knew what to do with them. The smaller stores couldn't survive without the anchors. Co-tenancy clauses in their leases allowed them to renegotiate their rent or break their contracts entirely when anchor stores closed. The mall's revenue collapsed. Landlords couldn't afford maintenance. The hallways grew dim. The fountains stopped running. The ferns died. Walking through a dying mall in the 2010s felt apocalyptic. Half the storefronts were covered with paper, faded for lease signs in the windows. The food court was reduced to a single Subway and a struggling Panda Express. The few remaining shoppers moved quickly and purposefully, trying not to acknowledge the decay. The teenagers were gone. They had Instagram now, TikTok, digital spaces where they could perform the same social rituals that used to require a physical mall. Why hang out at the food court when you could hang out in a group chat? The malls that survived were the ones that had always catered to the wealthy. Class A luxury malls, the ones anchored by Nordstrom and Apple stores, actually thrived. Their foot traffic increased. Their sales per square foot exceeded $1,500. These were not malls anymore. They were lifestyle centers. Curated experiences for people who did not need to worry about price. But the mid-tier malls, the ones that had served middle-class suburbia for decades, were finished. By 2020, Class B and C malls saw foot traffic drop by over 13% compared to pre-recession levels. Occupancy rates fell below 80%. Hundreds of them simply closed. The collapse of a mall is not just an economic event. It is a municipal catastrophe. When a regional mall dies, the city loses millions in tax revenue. The jobs vanish, not just retail workers, but security guards, maintenance crews, and delivery drivers. The surrounding businesses that depended on mall traffic, gas stations, restaurants, and hotels start failing too. Entire communities built around these structures found themselves hollowed out. Towns in the Rust Belt and rural America were hit hardest. The mall had been the only gathering place for 50 miles. When it closed, there was nothing left, and the buildings themselves became environmental nightmares. Massive concrete shells filled with asbestos, lead paint, and toxic mold. Demolishing a mall costs between $4 and $8 per square foot, millions of dollars before you can even start thinking about what comes next. In many cases, the land was not valuable enough to justify the cost, so the malls just sat there, rotting. But something unexpected has started happening in recent years. Some of these dead malls are being reborn. Developers discovered that transforming a mall is cheaper, faster, and more sustainable than tearing it down and starting over. Adaptive reuse cuts carbon emissions by 50% compared to new construction. The steel and concrete are already there. The electrical infrastructure exists. You just need imagination. In Columbus, Indiana, city leaders bought a dying mall and turned it into a medical hub and community center. Nexus Park now houses health clinics, an indoor sports facility, and public gathering spaces. The anchor stores became outpatient centers. The food court became a community cafe. In Dallas, a former Sears was transformed into a UT Southwestern medical facility, serving underserved populations. In Austin, Highland Mall, a windowless 800,000 square foot relic became a community college campus with health science labs, recording studios, and bioscience incubators. These transformations returned the mall to something closer to what Victor Gruen, the architect who invented the enclosed mall, originally envisioned in 1956. Gruen had wanted malls to be mixed-use community centers with housing, schools, medical offices, and civic spaces. Developers had ignored that vision and built pure retail boxes surrounded by oceans of parking. Now, 70 years later, we are finally building what Gruen wanted all along. Not because we have become visionary, but because we have no choice. The pure retail model is dead. The irony is almost poetic. The mall failed because it tried to be only one thing, a place to buy stuff. The malls that will survive into the 2030s are the ones that become everything: housing, healthcare, education, entertainment, and yes, some retail. The American mall wasn't killed by the internet. It was killed by its own success. We built too many. We made them too single-purpose. We designed them for a car-dependent, consumption-obsessed culture that was always going to evolve beyond them. The 1990s didn't destroy the mall in a single blow. They started a process that took 30 years to complete. A slow erosion of relevance. A gradual replacement of physical gathering with digital alternatives. A generational shift away from shopping as entertainment. But the memory remains, the smell of Cinnabon wafting through the corridors, the arcade with its cacophony of bleeps and explosions, the thrill of convincing your parents to drop you off for the afternoon, giving you 4 hours of unsupervised freedom in a climate-controlled paradise. For millions of us, the mall was where we learned to navigate the world without our parents, where we got our first jobs, where we had our first dates, where we felt for the first time like we belonged to something larger than our own families. That's what we lost, not just a building, not just a retail format, but a place, a third place, somewhere we could exist between the demands of home and work, somewhere we could just be. The malls that survive today are unrecognizable. They're called town centers now. They're outdoor. They're designed to look like streets. They're trying to recreate the very thing that malls originally destroyed, the walkable downtown. Perhaps we've finally realized what we threw away. Not just community spaces, but the idea that gathering should be easy, accessible, and free. That you shouldn't need to buy something to exist in public. The American mall was perfect for exactly the moment it was designed for. Post-war suburban expansion, car culture, and the birth of the teenager as a consumer class. When that moment passed, the mall couldn't adapt. What do you remember about the mall? What did it mean to you before it disappeared?